Hey guys, welcome to Cast, and this is my divisional round recap on personally what I thought about the games, what my own personal opinion was on how they went, and the reason why the teams won, why the teams lost. We are going to go in order, and we're going to start off with Texans and Kansas City. Disclaimer: I'm not going to annihilate the refs. I think that's been, analyzed quite a bit, and I think everybody knows about that story. I might touch on it a tiny bit, but that isn't going to be the narrative of why the Chiefs won. Now, the Chiefs, starting with them, I'll say this: abysmal passing game. Abysmal. You can't look at this game and say that Patrick Mahomes having 177 yards, yeah, he averaged 7.1 a catch, which is, pretty good. He was sacked 3 times. He was obviously pressured a little bit, but it's like they didn't really have a running game, to speak of. I get it that, obviously Matt Araiza, counted for negative 18, against, what would have been their whatchamacallit, their total run game or whatever, but like 68 yards. Ugh, it's really bad. 68 yards on, let me see this. Mahomes had 7 runs. That was one less than their leading rusher of Kareem Hunt. And Isaiah Pacheco only had 5. Can only imagine, I guess, what's going on there, why they're not running Pacheco as much, but looking at, the receiving, like I said, you look at Travis Kelce's longest playoff reception ever, which was 49 yards, and it was a crazy run after catch, you know, type of thing where it's like, oh, he dips to the middle and then he's able to get past Bullock, and then he's able to essentially get chased down because he's obviously older. He's my age, you guys. He's 30, he's 35 years old or whatever, gonna be 36 later in the year. But you look at that and it's like, without that, I mean, you think of Mahomes only having like, 100, 30 some yards passing. That is really bad. It reminds me of, my Packers in a sense that, Love didn't throw for that much a lot this year. It was, crazy inconsistent. And whether that was, because the wide receivers or whatever, but it's like this team, obviously they had trouble getting separation. And to me, it's like most of the bulk yards that they got, and this is my main point about their offense and what kept them alive, was that you look at Travis Kelce, and I feel like I'm not even a fan, but I noticed the trends through watching the games. It is so often to me that he is either doing a curl that's really really low, beneath the coverage if it doesn't look like he can run and get open right away for that security blanket style thing, or if the other team just doesn't cover him or that sort of thing, that he does a slight he doesn't in cut, about 5 yards up the field. And then teams just, I don't know what it is, but it's like they have a spy on Mahomes, but then they leave no one to cover Kelce. And then it leads to this repetitiveness of where he dumps it to Kelce. And it's mind-boggling to me. Maybe make it make sense, but it doesn't seem to me like it's a thing that like should work as often as it does. It's like, do people not realize that this is the Chiefs? No, they definitely do. Players talking about like how it's us versus everyone, but it's like it's insane to me how many times Travis Kelce would do an in cut and he'd be wide open. On the one that he caught, that was the longest gain of 49 yards. Yeah, it's like they were in bunch formation, but it's like It's insane to me. They had the number of guys. Like, I don't understand it. There's not some crazy deception going on here. It's just like defense, for whatever reason, they flop the hell out of guarding Kelsey. It's like they don't even have like a bona fide number one, really. I mean, DeAndre Hopkins had been doing good. He obviously was locked up this game. You know, one target the whole game. Xavier Worthy, got 6, and yeah, he got 5 catches, but it's like there's a lot of gadget stuff with him. And of course, Mahomes is willing to air it out for him. And then it's like Noah Gray, 3 for 3 for 13 yards. 3 targets, 3 catches. But it's absolutely mind-boggling to me, that teams haven't, like, with this injury it's like there's nobody really getting open on this offense, and it just isn't clicking, but I'm going to move on, and then I'll say this. The defense of Kansas City, they should be really grateful that for whatever reason, Stroud this year, who has been pressured, a lot and sacked the second most in the league, they should feel really assured that he isn't tempered to deal with such things, and that it was really easy for them to get sacks because he just wouldn't throw it and would hold on to it too much. And that's going to lead me to talking about the Texans. The Texans, I think they played a good defensive game, as good as you could say. Obviously the one roughing the passer call that I really didn't agree with, of course, was the one that gave them 15 and gave them, the ball, and it was Will Anderson in the backfield. It wasn't the one where the two guys collided and they barely nicked Mahomes' helmet. But looking at the Texans, I think they did a very good job running the ball, which shocked me, because the Texans O-line just hasn't performed well this year, to be honest with you. And I've seen games where they, Mixon tries to get going and he tries his darndest to, create yards and be able to do well, and he was able to average just under 5 yards a carry. Yeah, his longest was 13, but he was ultimately able to, run it. And then it's like this team just fell flat, in the red zone, type of thing. And when they crossed the middle of the field, they weren't in the red zone, I guess, too much, but when they crossed midfield, it's like the Kansas City defense woke up and they were like, we're not giving you another inch. You're going to have to earn this thing. But it's like Nico Collins had, not a great game or anything like that. But it's like you had Stroud spreading the ball when he was able to throw it. But yeah, the amount of sacks that he sustained in this game, he really needs to learn to up his clock. And I think it was a problem. You really saw it with him and Caleb Williams, that they held the ball too long sometimes. I think the line did a fair job. People are going to be like, well, what do you mean? They gave up 8 sacks. It's like, it wasn't always on them. I can't tell you. I feel like Stroud held onto the ball too long, and he just wasn't recognizing the pressure. Something for him to look over and, up his internal time clock, this offseason. But it's like you had guys, making plays. I know John Mechie had a couple of clutch catches. Same with Hutchinson. And then you have Nico Collins, and then even Dalton Schultz, catching every single target he had, but it just comes down to that you shot yourself too much in the foot when you were, across midfield, and it just, killed you guys. And I get it that your kicker missed a couple kicks, and it really, really sucks, for that. He obviously, if he made all 4 of his kicks, then yeah, you're talking about a 21-20 game where it's like, the Chiefs aren't able to they're not able to do what they did and essentially do a safety and give them the ball. But, overall, obviously a very peculiar game, a lackluster game. People acted like as though the Chiefs were going to own this team. And I was like, I really doubt it. Like, people were like, oh, they owned them in the regular season. Why doesn't nobody, I heard that people are like, why does nobody, think it's going to be the same way? Think it's going to be the same way, this game. And it's like it was a very peculiar game because of the game calls, I'll say that. And it's like they definitely favored the Chiefs on these, leading to what they were. But let us move on to Commanders Lions. So Commanders Lions, I was amazed. I did not think that I didn't think that the Commanders would just flat out score 28, in one quarter. That is insane to me. I mean, it was crazy to me that they kept talking about how the Commanders kept on, they were like, oh, this team, can score at will, blah, 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 blah. But it's like, you look at their schedule this year, I mean, obviously last week they only scored 23 on a game-winning field goal against the Buccaneers, but you look at their regular season type of thing, they've had several games, I guess, where they scored a lot, but then they also had games where they didn't score that much. They were talking about, I guess, like the Commanders were some high flying offense, and it's like, don't get me wrong, they are doing really, really well with a rookie QB who looks way more locked in than, some of these veterans. Goff, it's one of those ridiculous things that people don't seem to believe me. I have said that when this guy is forced into a situation where he feels the need that he has to pass it downfield to get a first because of either lack of run game or, lack of easy yardage, underneath yardage, type of thing, that he does not throw it good deep. I do not even care that he had 300 yards this game. I don't. He got a lot of beneficial yards from the fact that, the Commanders were up by so much. They were up by so much going into halftime, obviously, but it's like, then you put up 14 in the fourth quarter. It's like no team's coming back, from that. Not even, I guess I wouldn't even say they're the comeback kings. I would say that belongs more to the Chiefs this year, but, Detroit, Jared Goff, to me, is a glorified system quarterback and a system that greatly benefits him. And my overall opinion on him is that if he did not play for a team with a offensive coordinator that's really, really, really good at utilizing the studs of the team or on the offense, which are the O-line and the running backs, Sonic and Knuckles. As much as I hate calling them that, because I don't really I don't have a thing against Sonic and Knuckles, but I don't really think they're deserving of that, I guess. But looking on, we have Goff throwing 3 picks and essentially dooming his team. And it's like you have a run game that was, the only reason why they had a big average was because of a Jameson Williams run. And it's like, and a long Jahmyr Gibbs run. Without those, they have nothing. And essentially, to me, it was just a blown defensive scheme. And it's like, you look at that kind of play and you think that, like, oh, they needed one of these to even make it look semi-close. This game, to me, was just, bar and none, not even close. Obviously, it didn't end close either, but you look at the Lions, and it's like you got a lot of kind of like, I wouldn't say pity points, but you got a lot of kind of like anomaly points where it's like, oh yeah, he had to break this run, and the defense was just completely out of, completely bad call or wrong call or whatever you want to call it, in order to get these points. So the Lions, it's one of those interesting things that as a Packers fan, I've been kind of looking for the time when their coordinators leave, because how in the heck do you think a new offensive coordinator is going to come in and he's going to have the mindset to be able to go for it on fourth down? He's going to have to earn the trust of Campbell. And if he doesn't have to earn the trust of Campbell, that really... But I'm getting kind of off topic. I should talk more about the game. Maybe that's another video for another time. But looking at this, it just kind of proves to me that Goff, he really needs to, assess, his down the field throws. You even look at it and what he missed Jamison Williams early in the game, when it's like he had yards of separation. This is a guy that's got, some of the best speed in the NFL, and you overthrow him. And I was like, yep, man, he really can't throw it downfield, is what I was thinking. And then it goes from bad that you miss a free touchdown, to worse, where you're throwing picks. And it's like, Jaden Daniels to me just looked very, very polished, as a rookie, and he clearly is doing, I think he's doing a better job of his scrambling too, where, you would see him try to do it sometimes during the year, and he would just, essentially trap himself, and they would get tackled for like a no gain, a sack or something, thinking he's going to make, miracles happen, but he's really playing really hot, and it's one of the reasons why I think that next week is going to be a huge game. And I mean, the defense of Washington, I think they have some kinks to flush out, but they've really been coming along, and props to them, because, the Lions they were averaging, higher points a game. I'm not sure what their end of the season average was, but they were scoring a bunch, during the regular season. And maybe it's just a sign that you shouldn't keep milking your offense the way you did, and you should have had a more methodical game plan for the playoffs to help your wounded defense. But that's kind of my take on this. And it's like I said, I guess in my strengths and weaknesses video, but it's like, were the Lions playing legit what their defense is capable of against the Vikings when they played them, or was it just the Vikings not playing up to their potential? And it was the latter, where I think the Lions lucked out against the Vikings, because the Vikings stuttered, Sam Darnold stuttered, and the play calling just wasn't there, so the Lions really, got exposed in a game where you were favorites to go to the Super Bowl. But moving on, we have Eagles-Rams. Now, this game, to me, the thing that really killed the Rams, and obvious with most of the losers in the playoffs this year, was they committed turnovers, or they weren't able to, or they committed turnovers, and that sort of thing. Stafford with 2 fumbles, only lost 1. Kyron Williams with a fumble, which is rare, and he lost 1. So 2 fumbles lost. That, to me, if you didn't have these on plays where I think, it could have been better, but it's like, you look at, the play in the snow, and it just, they literally were out of their element, the Rams, and the hiking was bad. It just overall was kind of a mess for the Rams. And then you look at late in the game, they're able to drive and bring it close and get in the red zone. Now, Philadelphia, to me, they had another one of these games where it's like, oh, Hurts and DeJean had one. Obviously, we know that, DeJean's fumble, they came up with it or whatever else. Hurts is... they didn't lose it and that sort of thing. And you know, Kenneth Gainwell, Zach Bond, Isaiah Rogers, the team had 4 recoveries from fumbles. Obviously, 2 of those, from the Rams, but looking at this, you'd think that this team could win by a lot more. Well, they didn't. Jalen Hurts, yet again, while he passed for a 75% completion percentage, he only had 128 yards and he was sacked 7 times. Now, people were really doubted the Rams, but it's like they were a team that I thought would go in and they would be able to beat them. But I think, I definitely got blindsided by the snow. It was kind of one of those things that like, oh, hey, the snow will be coming in the game, but it's like, you never know that for certain, when you're predicting a game, but you look at even, a guy like, Dallas Goedert, he was really the only person that was really that like a threat to me, on this team, with big playability and being able to get open for Hurts and, always coming down with the ball. And he seems to be the only one able to create enough separation, make Hurts comfortable. I don't even know what to say about it, I guess. It's like they just don't really throw it down the field very well, which people were like, oh, yeah, the Slim Reaper, Smith. Nah, he averaged 5.3 a catch. A.J. Brown had 7 targets, but they were just not, to him most of the time. Kenneth Gainwell, 1 for 1 target, had 10 yards. He had their second highest average after Goddard. And it's like Saquon, dump passes to him. But you look at, one of them was a 16-yard gain, and then the 3 others, were for 11 yards. It was abysmal. So props to the Los Angeles defense. I think that they were able to kind of rebuild their defense in a year with O'Donnell, which is insane to say, type of thing. But it's like the Rams just ultimately got too many, foot shots, to themselves to where it was easy for Philadelphia to put up points. And that was the tale of this game. Looking at next week, maybe they get rekindled and maybe they're able to, beat the Commanders because it's a division rival in the championship game. But I worry for this team. They need the turnovers so bad. And the game that they don't get them, and it's like Jaden Daniels has been good with the ball. Brian Robinson is a halfback that doesn't fumble the ball. And then, their wide receivers, it's like they're scrappy and they're good at, he's good at contested catch, but it's like, I just don't see them doing well against the Commanders, despite it being at Philly. And people were like, oh, no one wants to go to Philly to play. It's like, I think people could care less, looking at this. I think that they realize that it's like, if we cut the turnovers or we don't have any, this team's going to bottom line and score a very minimal amount of points, and it's like, to me, the Eagles defense for how much it's praised, it's like you got luck. The elements helped you. It was the best 12th element or whatever you want to call it, to your defense to attribute to it. So, because it's like, without that, I really don't think that they beat the Rams. And it's like, people can tell me, oh, it's a part of the game, but it's like, oh, you don't know if next week there's going to be any snow, so it's not always a part of the game just because you're in Philadelphia. But overall, that's my take on this game. And I think that, it was kind of a doozy of a game that came down to the last minute. And it was a fun game to watch, I guess, But moving on, we have Bills Ravens. Quite a lot to look at in this game. I mean, I guess I wouldn't say a lot, but a bit, and I'll try to make it a little bit, shorter, because I think that everyone kind of knows what happened in this game. So we have Lamar Jackson, and he's been, criticized for the postseason not being able to execute and not being able to be the guy they want him to be. Well, he was the guy you wanted to be, but obviously the interception that he threw, really, really bad. The the fumbles that they had, it definitely was one of those where again, the center was missing on his snaps. And it's like, I don't blame Jackson completely to it, even though he was able to corral the football. And then Mark Andrews' fumble, a guy that, top 5 in the league as far as I'm concerned. Mark Andrews is a baller, and just an off game, obviously, with him, especially with, the drop 2-point conversion. But if you look at this game, I would not, in my mind, be blaming Mark Andrews at all for, not being able to force overtime. I think that the Ravens definitely had their more than their fair share of opportunities to put more points on the board. You look at, how many times they were in field goal range and when these turnovers happened, and even in the snow, I would trust Tucker. I would still trust him to hit it. He hit every single kick this game, 2 of 2 for field goals and then 1 of 1 for extra points, so overall, it just kind of comes to one of those, non-kicks that he didn't get essentially, and him, making it. So overall, kind of a nuts game. I think that Baltimore's defense played well, very, very well against a Buffalo Bills offense that they've seemingly moved it at will, and they held Josh Allen to 127 yards. Now, this is a little bit different to me, in the sense that, you have Josh Allen, being able to run it in for touchdowns, their run game essentially being what they leaned on in the snow, which was smart of them to me. They did give Josh Allen, his times to pass and that sort of thing. But, to me, there's a difference between what Josh Allen did and their focal point being the run game, then, even if we look at Jalen Hurts, passing it at a high clip, but he ultimately just, had to do all these dump off passes. It's like they game planned for this. It was very, very fortunate, that they were able to, rely on the run, obviously, against a Baltimore offense. And it does really give me hope that they're going to be able to keep on running the football because they have a very complete team. And, obviously, going into next week, there's nothing more than I would like to see than the Bills making the Super Bowl. But, yeah, the run game really good. Not really any sort of flashy sort of thing, but they kept on getting it done against an O-line with Pierce, Madabik, and, obviously Roquan Smith. And it's just, a team that has, had a really good run defense at the end of the year and a really good pass defense. So it's like they didn't play against, what was doing well for the Ravens, and they played pretty good defense to me. Being able to get turnovers, being able to get after, Jackson. Jackson obviously had a good amount of, yards running it, but you look at it from the aspect that his longest run was 16 yards. I mean, this is a guy who's had a highlight reel of runs this year. And, I do think that Lamar passed pretty well. I think that he kind of debunked, the rumors that he's never going to be a good playoff quarterback. I think he keeps scratching at the surface. And I think that, with the team that they have, and then round 2 of this happening last year, that they will still be an extremely dominant team and that the window isn't closing on the Ravens. But, yeah, what a game. I think that, you don't have one of those turnovers in your ultimate. And I mean, if you're Lamar Jackson, I think that he thinks that he can get out of any situation, which he almost can. But I think he's got to be a little bit more realistic, especially when it's in the snow, and be a little bit more cognizant about that. But I think that's going to do it for this video. There's not really kind of a play, obviously you think of the 2-point conversion that they should have had with Andrews, but at that point in the game, it kind of proves that it's like, no matter how good a veteran you have, no matter how good of a play you have drawn on, no matter how good of a throw it is, there's always that chance in the playoffs that like it's going to get to you, the pressure, and it's tough. And especially with, the ball possibly being a little bit slick from snow, but we may never know unless they say certain things to the unless Mark Andrews says like, "Oh, is the ball slick or what happened?" But I ultimately think that, this was probably the best cream of the crop game we will have this off season more than likely in true competitiveness. And if you guys have any comments or thoughts or anything that I didn't cover in the games, please leave them in the comments. But as always, this is Cast, and I'm your host, Casty Streeter. And as always, go Pack Go.